Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, an introduction to analytics as code and the VS Code plugin. My name is Harry Dix, Senior Content Manager here at GoodData. And for those who are not familiar with GoodData, our cloud-based data analytics platform brings AI-fueled data-driven decision-making to organizations across the globe. Over 140,000 of the world's top businesses and 3.2 million users rely on GoodData in order to drive meaningful change and achieve more through data. Before we start, let me briefly go over some webinar logistics. All attendees are muted upon entry. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Zoom Q&A box, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. If we have time allocated at the end of the webinar to answer any outstanding questions you might have. And lastly, a follow-up email with the webinar recording will be sent to all participants in case you'd like to return to any of the topics that will be discussed today. Today's agenda. We'll cover the origins of the as code approach and the foundations of analytics as code. We'll also show you why analytics as code is so important and the real benefits of it. And finally, we'll be running a live demo of the GoodData for VS Code plugin to demonstrate, a real-world example of as code in analytics in action. Your speakers today are Andy Chumak and Tomasz Muchka. Andy, thanks for joining.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Andy here, and I've been with GoodData for about 2.5 years. I'm in engineering, and one of my focus points here is developer experience, and analytics as code as a part of that as well.
And Tomasz, welcome aboard today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. So I've been with GoodData over 6 years already, starting as a platform UX designer and now supporting the developer experience of analytics as code or GoodData for VS Code.
Thanks both. I'll now hand you over to Andy. Take it away, Andy.
Yeah. So let's get to business. First of all, I want to talk why we should care about as code approach in general. What is it? Where did it appear first, and so on. Let's look at the codification timeline. Long ago, when I was just starting my career as engineer, we used to deploy everything on hardware servers. So we had to have the actual physical servers where we deploy our code to run it. In mid-2000s, services like AWS started to appear. There were a few before AWS, and there were a few after, like Azure and Google Cloud. And it was very good news for us engineers, because we no longer had to handle hardware. We just needed to handle software. But also very quickly, we found out that this approach comes with its own issues, like it's quite hard to maintain a large amount of microservices. You need to, deploy a new version of your software. You need to make sure that operation system is up to date and so on. And quite quickly, by the end of 2000s, infrastructure as code came to be. And basically, what does it mean? What infrastructure as code mean is that instead of some bearded admin sitting in the dark room next to the terminal and entering commands in the terminal, there was a file, some sort of repository with a file that had declarative definitions of what should be deployed where, what kind of version you want to use it, and so on. So basically, you're describing your analytics in some form that a machine can understand, and then machine can process this and deploy your system. And it came with a lot of benefits. You could version your infrastructure. You could deploy it to new servers very quickly, and there is very little human error possibility. Further along, as code approach kind of continued to develop, and we had more and more tools becoming as code. We have pipelines as code. That's something that I mentioned already. When you deploy in your code, you want to specify what and where to deploy. And instead of doing it every time manually, you define some sort of system. You define some static declarative files that where you describe what and where to deploy. Security as code appeared, and pretty much every aspect of a modern tech company is becoming sort of codified over time. More and more different aspects are becoming as code. And that brings us to 2020s. Tomasz?
Yeah, thank you. That's something we would like to explore a bit today. That's kind of the years of analytics as code. So to do that, we should mention one more important milestone, and that's like the rise of analytics engineers. So could you please move to the next slide? Yeah, thanks. So pardon me. So we spoke about the rise of analytics engineers. So that's something that's tailored term by DBT, but we actually saw the very same thing happening even within GoodData or like with our customers. So who are the analytics engineers? There are three aspects of them I would like to introduce to you. The first one is that those are the people responsible to enable the end user self-service. The second point is that those people, they spend time with data, meaning they transform, they test, they deploy data. And the third and the most important thing for us is that those are the people who try to apply the software engineering best practices to the world of analytics, to the world of data. And that's super important for us. Maybe you ask, what are actually the software engineering best practices? It sounds quite foggy. So let me actually dig deeper into these aspects or into these best practices. So the first one is the ability to create and maintain the solution in an end-to-end manner. So that's like something that software engineers have been like playing with for quite a long time. They have their projects, their workspaces, and they have all the important aspects of the application or of the solution in one place, being able to do any changes there, to be able to revert like from hiccups and so on. So that's super important. Not something we would see in the world of analytics before 2020 so much, but we would like to make this make a change here. So the second aspect we would like to follow is to be able to reduce context switching. Again, that's something similar to the previous point. If you have everything on one place, then you are like really reducing the context switching quite a lot, because you can then control it or maintain the whole application. Speaking about analytics, then analytics application, from within one, let's say, tool, be it an IDE, in our case, VS Code. Okay.
Yeah, and I will tell you about test automation because it's more concerned with engineering rather than UX. And what is test automation? It's basically some way to automatically verify that the new version of your project, the one that you're going to deploy on your production servers to your users, is actually good and you're not breaking anything for the users. In software engineering, we've had test automation for a long time. You probably heard people talking about unit tests and end-to-end tests and functional tests and so on. But basically, this is what allows us to press that deploy button on the Friday evening and not be very worried that someone will call you up and tell you to fix a bug that was deployed in that time while you're off. And another aspect is version control. And that's a lot of tools, even in analytical space, have some sort of version control. You can revert to the previous version of your workspace, of your analytical project. But with software engineering best practices, it's a little bit even further than that. It's not only about the ability to revert back to the previous state of the project, but also, let's say, branch out. You want several people, several analytical engineers working on different features in the same project, so they can create different branches in Git and work on those different branches, define slightly different parts of the project, and then merge it back into master branch or the main branch when the feature is ready and you feel confident in deploying it. And last thing is from my side is collaboration. This is actually quite close to version control and branching. on top of Git or other version control systems, there are usually cloud services that allow you, that have some UI and allow you to kind of interact with that code, with that branches. You probably heard of GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and there are more of those on Azure as well. And the important part here is that it's not just you as an analytical engineer who is writing this code files. It's not just you and your test automation. You can make a pull request from one branch to another and ask your colleague to review this, and they can comment on every line of the code and tell you, okay, this SQL statement looks a little bit fishy to me. Let's maybe use a different syntax here, or let's maybe use a different metric in this visualization. So it kind of encourages people to communicate more, even offline, even without being in the same room. And it's another layer of security that you add on top of automation tests, because automation tests cannot cover everything. They can cover some basic logic, but when it comes to business logic, a human needs to look into that. Maybe in a few years, ChatGPT will be smart enough, but not yet. And for the last point, back to Tomáš.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I think everyone already guessed that we actually split those points in advance at this point. But anyway, let me maybe add one more thing to the collaboration. I really liked how you explain it, and the thing I wanted to add is that, like, I've seen plenty of dashboards and analytic solution already, but I haven't seen a single one which would be pretty much uniform in a way that, like, all the visualizations, all the dashboards would follow like a strict guideline, and they would really have the same look and feel. There's always something new, so always something that like was added by a single person who just didn't know the guidelines pretty well. So I think this could really, this kind of collaboration that is allowed like within the software development best practices would really like improve the situation, or could improve the situation here. But never mind, let's go to the iterations and iterative development, in our case, iterative development of analytics. So we know that nowadays it's all about fast delivery, and we always try to iterate in the world of analytics to like improve the visualizations a bit, like to add a new information to it. The same goes with the dashboards. Luckily, the guys from the software engineering, they knew this for quite a long time, and they even have like this kind of development in their best practices. So we would like to follow up on that and see if we can reuse these best practices and this toolbox they have also in the world of analytics. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
I'll actually jump in there, guys. We have a couple of questions. So some of them might be relevant as we go. You were mentioning kind of ChatGPT earlier. Matthias is asking, does this reporting as code also enable creating interactive reports and reasoning with the data and visualizations through AI, generative AI?
Yeah, I will touch about that a little bit in the next slide, but to answer your question, it really depends on the analytical solution that you are working. If your analytical solution is purely SQL based, let's say, what generative AI can do for you is help you generate SQL. So you would tell ChatGPT, hey, I have these tables in my database. How do I extract this metrics? And it will probably suggest you some SQL. I'm not saying it will be a good SQL, but it will be some SQL that you can try and see if it works actually, and maybe then through a few iterations get to some proper results. In our case, it's even better, because GoodData is the analytical solution that is based on semantic model, meaning that we have a lot of extra metadata on top of the table, and we are not using SQL. Well, you can use SQL, but in general, you're not using SQL to define visualizations and explore your data. You're using semantic model, and generative AI can be very powerful in that. We actually have a few prototypes on that with OpenAI and basically ChatGPT that you can use. Perhaps we can send you a link afterwards after the webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, another one that's kind of closely related to that is, does your analytics as code approach currently cover the entire analytics life cycle, or just some parts of it? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, for again, particularly for GoodData, I can talk only about our solution, analytics as code. We are covering most of the analytical project within GoodData for VS Code. And that means that you have a plugin for VS Code. You have autocomplete, all this nice feature, real-time validation for most of your analytical project. Plus, we have tools like Python SDK, declarative REST API, and so on that can help you to do the life cycle. So let's say you basically, to explain it in simple terms, you define your analytics, your workspace, your visualizations, metrics, and dashboards as code within the VS Code, GoodData for VS Code. And then whenever you need to do a life cycle, like propagate new customers to the system and so on, you can do that through Python SDK.
Great. I think we can continue and pick up a couple more questions as we go. But feel free, everyone and anyone, to keep on firing your questions over.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I will continue. And yeah, I think we actually will touch these two questions on the next slide. You have like with like a lot of images and so on. But before we go there, I would like to speak about why GoodData as code. We spoke about analytics as code, and you even touched this like in the question. So like this as code approach, yes, that's something we really are into, but maybe we are not the only one, or definitely like where we cannot speak about like the whole movement of like analytics as code. But why GoodData? Why you should choose GoodData for being or working with as code analytics? So we have prepared two slides for that. The first one is that GoodData's platform is analytics for all kinds of users. We have done several researches there, and one of them where like one of the results we have seen was that the people, when we started to speak about S code, that people were like, okay, so you only are capable of doing this, but I would like to have a UI for my users. I would like to have some sort of click and point UI for them, for the end users. Let me assure you that GoodData has discovered. We are a platform for business consumers, for those people who are, for those end-to-end users, for data analysts, for people who actually prepare the solution, who curate the solution for the end users, and also for the analytics engineers, for the people who like kind of take care about like the whole ecosystem, the whole like platform together. So if we move forward a bit, so for those business consumers, there are the interactive dashboards. They can consume them. They even have like real interactivity on top of them, rails and so on. Anything you can expect out of modern dashboards, plus ad hoc analytics. For the data analysts, there's like point and click curated or like UI to curate the experience, to create the dashboards, to create the visualizations, plus metric editor, model editor, those things, and we spoke about when talking about semantic layer. And for analytics engineers, on top of course, they can use even the point and click UI. I'm not sure if they would like to, but they can. But definitely for them, we are an API first platform. We have the SDKs, speaking about Python SDK, even React SDK for the UI developers, and something we would like to speak about today, that's GoodData for VS Code. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And Andy, I think that's yours. That's like full of images.
Yeah. I like diagrams, like all engineers like these diagrams, you know. Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about the state of analytics as code at the moment. You probably recognize some of these icons in here. Basically, since 2020, once dbt started to be a big thing, or bigger and bigger thing, more and more people started to look into analytics as code. And usually this means codifying your first steps in your data pipeline. So you are doing extraction and load, basically data injection here. And typically, historically, it was done with some custom Python script or some other language. And now you have also tools like Meltano that help you a little bit with that, provide you with a framework that you can use to build up your extract and load. And then you use something like dbt for transformation. Again, everything as code. You have your SQL queries or maybe Python files to work with the data transformation. And then on the other hand of this spectrum, dashboards and visualizations it was possible to codify them for a long time. You probably know of HighCharts or Chart.js, a lot of libraries for front-end engineers, React frameworks, and so on, that are able to visualize the data for you and you define those as code. But there was very little in this semantic layer and metric creation in this analytical kind of section of the pipeline between you extract your data and you show it to your users. And what we are trying to achieve here with GoodData is to bridge this gap. Now, GoodData is familiar with as code approach for a very long time. This is not our first tool for analytics as code. We have declarative REST API. We have Python SDK for things like lifecycle management and so on. We have React SDK that will help you embed analytics through visualizations and dashboards. And finally, now we have GoodData for VS Code to kind of glue it all together. And the way it works is that you have a simple YAML files that are declarative, that are very easy to read and understand for people. You don't need to have some special knowledge in programming. You don't need to know Python for that. And with that, you can define a semantic layer, you can define metrics, and even visualizations and dashboards if you wish so. Of course, you can still do this in UI, and you can still use React for that, but it is also possible with GoodData for VS Code.
Let me just step in, and I was really like focusing on what you were saying, and I totally agree that like for visualization and dashboards, there was this like as code approach for quite a long time with HighCharts and other visualization libraries. On the other side, in the world of analytics and business intelligence, I kind of saw that like not many data analysts or BI analysts would be willing to actually call for a front-end developer every time they would like to do a visualization or a dashboard. So that's something new, that you actually do not need to have this skill, yet you can use all the goods that as code approach offers. You don't need to be a software engineer, yet you can use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Now we are ready for the demo, unless there are some questions that we can answer right away.
Yeah, we have a couple questions we can take before we kick the demo off. The first one here is from John. How about the ease of deployment of new analytics dashboards to customer environment, especially in the case of on-premise deployments? How does GoodData make it easier yet effective to do so?
Yeah. So in the very plain terms, you can have deployment on your own premises. We do provide GoodData Cloud Native for that. And the easiest way is to use our declarative APIs and Python SDK to kind of code your pipeline for that. So you will have, let's say, one environment running for your development. You will create your analytics there, you will test it there, and then whenever you're ready, you will run some pipeline that would use Python SDK and REST API to kind of clone the stuff from one server to another that would be actually serving your users. And of course, you can also put it into Git in between. So it's completely up to you how you set up your pipelines. Now with GoodData for VS Code, it's even easier because you define your analytics already in the code from the very beginning. You don't need to actually pull something from some server and then push it to another. You define everything in Visual Studio Code, and then you deploy it to let's say, development server, then to testing server, then to production server in kind of stages, in the same way as you would deploy any other application, be it front-end app or server app.
Yeah, let me maybe add to that. I saw a second kind of question in this main question, so maybe I was wrong. But let's take it vice versa, and let's say like that you would use Tableau or Power BI for all those deployments. And the thing is that of course they allow you to do this, but can you really do it at scale? Like with Tableau, you would probably change the target of your deployment each time you kind of work with that, or you maybe even would like to download the assets from Tableau, which is some sort of zip file, if I'm not mistaken. The very same goes for the Power BI. So imagine you would like to do any kind of customization before you deploy it to the next domain. You would like to have any kind of customization. That's almost impossible with those zip files. So you are kind of doomed to do it in the UI, to do all the changes there each time. That's something that really does not scale up. But with GoodData, it's all readable. It's actually meant for you to kind of download the assets, in our case, the project definition or workspace definition, whatever we call it, and do the updates, and then really at a scale to be able to deploy this. We have our tooling for that. You can either use the Python SDK or our command line interface.
Okay, I think we can jump into the demo, and then we've got a little time after the demo to answer any final questions.
Right. Tomasz, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the demo time. Okay, thank you. So let me share my screen as well. So we have prepared an analytics as code workspace for you for the demonstration purposes. So that it's pretty simple. There's our semantic model built, it's about Bond movies. We are fans of James Bond, me and Andy. So we created this workspace. It contains just 3 data sets, 3 tables with some interesting data about Bond. And there are even some dashboards. So we can see there are 2 dashboards. First one is focused on the actors who played Bond, starting from George Lazenby up to Roger Moore. They are not sorted by the time, but so the last one was Daniel Craig actually. And there is another dashboard about the movies, so we can filter any movie here, or we can see aggregated statistics about the movies. Let me pass the voice to Andy, who will guide us through how this actually looks in code.
Yeah, so I have exactly the same project now cloned to my Visual Studio Code and represented as those YAML files that I was talking about so much. So finally you can see what it looks in practice. Here I have all the files for dashboards. So we have 2 dashboards in this project. We have 3 data sets. You remember Tomasz showed you at the very beginning. And then we have some metrics created for that, and a lot of visualizations that are used in this dashboards. And you can see it roughly corresponds. It's quite easy to read, and it roughly corresponds to what you see on the screen in here, right? So we have a dashboard called Actors. It has 2 sections. The first section doesn't have any title, and it has just 1 visualization, which is this one. And then we have another section with the title and with 2 visualization in it. So very simple dashboard with just 3 charts on it. And the good thing about this as code approach is that it's not just syntax highlighting; it also helps you to work with the project. Like if I remove a few characters here, you can see that it's underlined as red. Basically, it does real-time semantic validation of the whole project, and it tells you, hey, there is no visualization with this ID that you're trying to reference. So you probably have a mistake. And if you will try to deploy it right now, it will not allow you. It will just tell you, hey, you're trying to deploy something broken. Of course, you can do override, but that's another question. And then it also has other features, like it can suggest you the correct answers based on what you already entered. So here, let's say like this, you can see everything that starts with A and can be used in this particular context. So I will just undo my changes. Right. And let's say Tomasz wants to create yet another visualization on the dashboard, and he's missing.
Pardon me, Sandy. I have clear idea of what kind of visualization I would like to do.
Sorry.
But the issue is I cannot do it right away. Like my knowledge of like metrics is not so high to be actually able to do so. So maybe you can help me with that. So my question would be, I would like to see how many years each actor, I mean like Bond actor, has played, you know, or performed as James Bond. So can you help me maybe with that one?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we are doing now is that imagine that I am an analytical engineer. I'm very knowledgeable about all the data sets, all the metrics that already exist, and I'm the guy who would create these metrics in the real world, while Tomasz is more like a guy who would create visuals and present it to the end user. Let me just create a new metric now and call it something like Bond actors years. YAML. So we have a new YAML file. And since I'm also not very good at our metric syntax, I will copy paste the prepared one.
Maybe I should have asked someone else, because I actually come to the possibility that you are so skilled with ArcMacal.
Yeah. So here is a new metric, and I will quickly guide you through it. Basically, it says that it is a type of metric. It has this ID, it has this title, and this is the MACL. MACL is our syntax for defining metric. It's like multidimensional analytical query language. And what it means is that you define a metric that can be then sliced by different attributes or different dimension and so on, and used sort of like a templated SQL in some other companies use templated SQL for that, but MACL is way more powerful than that. And MACL looks like this. Basically, you have some nested selects that are running under condition, and depending on the age of the movie, it will return you the correct number. And at the end, I have some format. So what is the default format for the number that returned by this MACL? Another nice feature of VS Code extension that we have is that you can actually preview this metric right away. I can click on this run button in here, and it will hopefully preview the metric. I guess we are having the demo effect as usual.
But let me say in the meantime, how important is this? Like we spoke about the context switching and like being able to define all the analytics using code, that's fine. But unless you can actually see what is the result of the analytics, then it's like half baked. So we really like took our opportunity to be able to add preview for all the elements. Now we support metrics and data sets, but in the near future, we would like to support visualizations, and in the far future, we would like to support dashboards too.
Yeah. So basically here I have the preview. By default, it just calculates one number because that's what a metric is, a number. But I can also view it or slice it by certain attributes, and in this case, the name of the actor. So if I click run here, it will calculate the spread of this MACL by the name of the actor, and we can see that, let's say, Daniel Craig played Bond for something like 15 years. Is that right? That sounds like very, very big time period to be a James Bond.
It started very young, and now he is getting quite old. But yes, it's correct. It's 15 years.
You know. Okay. And the last thing is, okay, so now I have this nice new metric, and I have it all prepared and tested. I validated that it is actually returning the numbers that make sense to me. So what I want to do is push it to Git. I'm not going to deploy it right away to the server. I'm using some sort of development server to test it out. And then for production, well, all I need to do is create a new branch. So create branch, I will call it something like new metric, not very good name, but good enough for quick demo. And then I'm going to define a message here. Edit a new metric. Of course, you want to be more specific than that, but again, good enough for the demo. And I will commit and push.
And that sounds almost like a black magic, some sort of voodoo. So I'm a bit familiar with Git. So basically what you are doing is that you commit your changes and you push them to the upstream, meaning some sort of like master, or in your case, you create a new branch that's optional. Am I right?
Yeah. So basically what I did just now is I saved my changes and put it into GitHub as a new branch and a new version of this project. And here in GitHub, you can see there are 2 branches now, and there is a new metric branch was pushed 19 seconds ago, and GitHub is kind enough to even suggest a pull request for me. So I will use that quick button and I will check that, okay, I want to make a pull request, and I want to make a pull request to my own repository. And it will even show what exactly are we changing here. So I'm quite confident in doing this pull request. And now typically what would happen is I would ask Tomasz to review it, or someone else, maybe someone more knowledgeable with Macl, to double check my work. And that's where the communication can start. Someone would, let's say, leave a comment here and say, hey, this Macl doesn't make sense to me. Let's do it a different way. And then I would adjust my code, push a new version, and so on. But let's say it passed the review, it's all good, and now I'm just clicking the merge. And what does it mean is that it is pushing my changes that I committed into the main branch. And since I have automation here set up as well, it's also automatically deploying this new version right away to the server. So here I have a script that validates, makes sure that I didn't do any mistakes, that I don't have anything underscored in red in my Visual Studio Code, basically. And once that is done, another script basically deploys it to server. So now pretty much Tomasz can continue with his part and finish the visualization.
Okay, let's take it visual. And if I can, yeah, thanks. Let's like make it visual again. And so now, like, this is the original dashboard. There are no changes, but now we should actually have the ability. We should have the new metric. So let's actually do a new insight. I will show you the point and click UI. It's something I'm more used to. So now there should be the new metric that should be
Refresh.
yeah, how many years an actor spends as Bond. That's exactly what I wanted. Okay, and let's actually break it down by the Bond actor name, which should be here, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so we can easily make it a bar chart.
Still 15 years.
Yeah. You can see we have a reliable platform. It shows the results the same way. So now let's call it like Bond in years, and let's put it on the dashboard. Yeah, I will just like to make it seem consistent. I will just like make it a bit shorter, or like to match the grid here. Let's not spend time with like those different colors. That would be again in the definition, or like we can do it in the definition of the visualization. If I would edit it, then we can change the colors to match the colors here. That should always be the same. You can see that Pierce Brosnan is always in red, while Daniel Craig always in blue. The same could be done here. Maybe if we have time, and it can show you how it looks in the configuration of the visualization in code again.
Yeah, and basically the idea here is then next, once Tomasz is ready, he can also do the pull from server and make another pull request, so that it's always, the source of truth is always the code. The source of truth is always there, and we are able to basically pull and push from and to different servers as we please.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. So what we are showing you today is how this visual representation can translate to GoodData as code or for VS Code. We have shown you the tooling we actually provide for the better or the best possible developer experience / user experience. So you saw all the auto completions, ITLSense, also the validations and so on, and how readable even this code representation of our dashboards and visualizations and so on are, that these are human readable YAML files which can be easily collaborated on, they can be easily versioned, and many other things. I think that's all from our side, and now I believe there's time for questions.
Yeah, let me quickly jump back to the presentation, and we have questions.
Great. Let's move on to some questions. Firstly, from Shashank, does the ChatGPT, sorry, example you were speaking about use RAG?
RAG.
I've searched for that, and it's the Retrieval Augmented Generation Framework. I wasn't familiar with that one. I'm more familiar with the S-code approach rather than ChatGPT and AI things, but I searched for that.
No, the POC that we did is using purely OpenAI at this point. Of course, we since this is just a POC, we wanted to try out and see what is possible with analytics as code and AI, and with just analytics and AI, generative AI. So that's why we use that platform. But of course, once we go further and start the productization for that, we will look into what is there on the market and what is the best tool for our goals.
And the next question here, does this mean your platform is only aimed at technical users who know how to code? I think we went through this. This was probably asked before we went through the different user personas. I can answer that one. No, we cover kind of the business consumer, the data analyst, and the analytics engineer. So everything from drag and drop right through to kind of pure coding.
And that's not even all the personas. We also have front-end engineers, let's say, that have our React SDK and so on. So
we cover them all. Another question here. It looks like there are definite benefits of the as code idea. What would you say are the main ones in your opinion, I guess?
Yeah, Tomasz, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can take it. Definitely. I hope we explained this at least a bit. It was understandable. So definitely that's like version control, ability to be able to put it into the version control, which brings us to collaboration and ability to kind of revert the changes you didn't want to make, and having more control over what goes to production and what does not. The ability to iterate on the results, easily iterate on the results. And of course, it also opens the areas of like validation of results, previews, and possibly automation of the testing, which is something that is fairly familiar to software engineers, but not so much for the world of analytics. So I would stick to those, the main ones.
Yeah. If you want to have like an eagle eye overview of that, I can tell you from the software engineer perspective, because these individual items were adopted over time, not all at once. And when I was just starting my career, it was we didn't do that much test automation. We barely used version control, and not in a way as we do now, and so on. And with every item that was added from these best practices, the peace of mind increased dramatically. The me being sure that my code will not break production was increased dramatically, and the time spent on debugging some very weird bugs that someone ran a wrong command while deployment and so on was completely dropped. So we don't have these concerns anymore in engineering, or almost don't have. Of course, things happens. Yeah, but that's it. And if we can bring the same things to analytics, to building an analytical project, that would be great.
Okay, I think that's about all we have time for now. I think we managed to get through just about all of the questions. So we can wrap things up. So that's it from us today, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Andy and Tomasz for speaking. If you're interested to learn more, check out our website via the QR code on the screen there. You'll find more information about the GoodData platform, as well as further reading on analytics as code and related topics within our blog and resources area. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Have a nice day.